Hey everybody, my name is Cameron Strickland, the host of Cameron's Nostalgia Podcast, and welcome to episode number 16 of Cameron's Nostalgia Podcast. Today I'm having with my guest, Rickey Boyd.
Hi. Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you, Cameron. I got to meet Cameron recently on a visit down to Nashville, so he asked me to do this. It's nice to meet him and sure a lot of fun to meet you guys.
Yes. Now, for any of the guys who don't know, Rickey is a puppeteer and animation director for Magnetic Dreams. He played Cookie Monster's grandma on Sesame Street and Waffle in Animal Jam. And he was a puppeteer for Splinter in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That's right. I was one of the assistant puppeteers. There were three of us. Kevin Class performed the head and the voice. I performed the arms and hands. And then we had another puppeteer, Sue Daker. It was on the first film, and I'm trying to remember the name of the other puppeteer. Shoot. But there's another puppeteer that controls the radio controls for the eyes and the ears. So it takes three people at least to make Splinter come to life.
Okay, so starting off with our first question. Okay, so how did you get interested in puppetry?
I was really interested in animation and puppetry at a very young age. Um, I was a kid, when there was no internet. I sound like an old man now, but I am an old man, but there was no internet. So there were like three channels. And if you were lucky, you got UHF. So a big thing for kids back then was to come home after school and watch Sesame Street in the afternoon on PBS and other shows like Batman, and watch reruns of old movies. And then on Saturdays, of course, to watch cartoons because they were only on Saturday and after school. And then on Sunday night, there was The Wonderful World of Disney. So growing up on a small farm in the country, those were escapes and things that I thought were really interesting. And so I was fascinated with Sesame, with the puppets, and really trying to figure out how they were done, how they were made, how they were operated. And there's really not very much out there. There may be one book that I could find about building puppets. It just was very hard to find information. And I was also interested in animation. I had a little camera, Super 8 camera, that I would do really crude animated films and claymation. So I always had an interest from probably age 9 or 10. And then I had a friend whose dad was director at a local, what would have been called a public access TV station, a small station. And he would let us come over on spring break, and in the summer, we'd build our own puppets, turn on the cameras. It was a full-blown studio. And he would just let us go play in the studio, and we would write our own scripts and draw storyboards and turn on these thousands of dollars worth of equipment to shoot our little puppet shows. And even at that young age, you start learning to work with a monitor, because in television and film puppetry, everything's reversed, flipped. So all of that, at a very young age, began to play with that stuff. And then again, kept making little movies and building my own puppets. And I like to draw. I drew a lot. And I thought maybe I would one day work for Jim Henson, or if that didn't work out, maybe I would be an animator at Disney or something. So those were always, and we had art influence in my family. I had an aunt who was an artist, and growing up in a small town like Adairsville, I found out when I was a kid, my grandfather gave me a Super 8 camera, and he was explaining how it worked, and said, there's a guy that grew up in Adairsville that worked for Disney. And it turned out he was going to be in town for an arts fair, and his name was Paul Satterfield, and he was an animation director on Bambi and on Fantasia, and I was just blown away. And I went and met him, and he was just a super nice elderly gentleman at that time. I was probably 10 years old, and he was trying to see if I could find, he gave me, there was a little display with his animation drawing board, and he gave that to me. I still got it here in my office somewhere. So I always had encouragement, and people always encouraged me to pursue. And I took art class, and then I went to college and did to Shorter College in Rome, Georgia, which was a nearby town. And they didn't really have puppet or animation courses, but they were very supportive in kind of honing things to what I wanted to do. And I ended up doing an internship at a TV station, the same station I went to as a kid, actually, with my buddy. By then, his dad had moved on and wasn't there anymore, but I was working with two college buddies, and we did two kids shows, one called Kids Club and one called Dr. Neutron's Castle. And we did 30, I think we did 30 episodes totally. And I built all the puppets. I probably built 20 puppets, and some of them look good, some of them not so good. Luckily, the cameras were bad enough back then that it wasn't high def, so you could get away with stuff. But that videotape that I did in college is actually what got me the job at Henson, got me an interview with Henson. So that's a long story, but that's how it started.
Nice. So, what was your first on-camera debut?
First time on camera? You mean like professionally or just playing around as a kid? Professionally with Henson? Okay. At Henson, I think the first thing I did, they call me up to do what they call a workshop. And my friend from Rome, the college buddy, Keith Thomas, and I went up to New York. This was in 1988. And the plan was to meet. I'm sort of giving you more than you want to know, but I thought I'd go ahead and give you this story because this leads up to how I ended up getting my first job. We went up and we were supposed to do an interview with Jane Henson at the Henson office, which was in the east side of New York, at the main office for Henson. So you may have seen in the documentaries about Henson, the spiral staircase that goes up, and then Jim's office is up at the top. Really cool building. And we go in, and my buddy and I are sitting there waiting, and we're sitting in you may have seen pictures of the old Henson office where there's theater seats, and then behind the seats there's this mural that looks like you're in the Muppet Show theater. It's a very famous painting they had. And we're sitting there in front of that painting, and Jane comes down and gets me and says, "It's your turn." So she takes me upstairs. We're supposed to do interviews the first day, then that night do the actual audition or workshop. So it was like a two event thing. So I go up and go to Jane's office, and she gave me a puppet and asked me to do some voices and sing. And I said, "Well, I can sing." I said, what do you want me to sing?" She said, "Oh, anything, happy birthday." So I was saying happy birthday. And the puppet was not a Muppet. It was a really kind of badly made store-bought puppet. It was not anything fancy at all. It was really not very good. On the way down the stairs, she said, "We'll see you tonight at the workshop." I'm on my way back down the spiral staircase, and Jim Henson's coming up the stairs. It was the first time I met him, and we passed, and I said hi, and he said hello. And I went back down, and my buddy says, "That was Jim Henson." I said, "Oh, no joke." So I sit back down, and Jane follows me down the steps, and she said, "Rickey, would you like to come back up and meet Jim?" And of course, I was freaking out inside. I said, "Oh, yeah, sure." So I go back upstairs and go into Jim's, there's his secretary or his personal assistant's office. At the time was Alex Rockwell. And then walked into his office, and it's the famous office in all the documentaries where you've got the stained glass windows with Ernie and Bert, Jim's desk, and then there's some sort of golden, looks like an elk or something on the wall, some creature. And I think there was a chair from Dark Crystal, and there's this little seating area there. And he said, just have a seat. I have a seat. And I had brought my portfolio with my artwork in it. And he thumbed through that and he said, oh, this looks a lot like how I got started. I said, yeah. I said, I've studied everything you did. I'm, trying my best to do what you did, try to figure this out. And Jane said, I want you to do something for Jim, but I want to go get a better puppet. So she leaves and comes back in the office with an anything Muppet. The anything Muppets are just little sort of neutral puppets, not a famous character, it was a little boy. He was like a Sesame Street anything Muppet. She said, here, do something for Jim. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I put the puppet on, and the only thing I could think of was I should just play it the way I feel, which was nervous and excited. So I had the puppet basically audition for Jim and explain to him that he could do voices and he could act and he could sing and dance, and he was very nervous. And Jim laughed, and Jane said, I hope you can be there tonight. He said, well, I'll try to be there. So I shook his hand, got a picture made, and that evening we go to the workshop, and we did a typical workshop the way Henson would do it at the time with Jane. Jim wasn't there yet. And I think Kevin Clash was there, Marty Robinson, and I think, who else was there? Dave Rudman. And there are about 7 of us that had been called up for this workshop. And we do a workshop where basically you start out very simple with lip sync, singing songs that everybody knows. Some of us would be the chorus and have to do choreography in the background while the person in the front had to sing the main lines and make sure you could do lip sync. We all did that. And then Jim came in and they had us all do whatever we wanted to do. The only specific thing they asked you to do was to enter the frame, say something, and exit the frame. That was it. It could be anything you wanted. And so I had never been to New York before, and I heard Steve Whitmire had a similar experience. When you go to the door at one of these businesses in New York, there's a button usually to buzz, and then a person hears you and says, yes, who is it? And they buzz you in, otherwise you can't open the door. So I had the puppet basically do that. He came in and he looks at the Henson door, and then he reaches up and buzzes the button and goes, hello, and he's trying to get in and he can't get in, so he leaves. That's the only thing I could think of. And it really, to be honest with you, I didn't think it was that good. But after we finished, we had a few minutes to talk to Jim Henson and ask him questions. And as we were leaving, there was no guarantee you would get work. It was just, we want to see what you can do. So we're leaving, and let's see, I'm trying to remember everybody's names. Anyways, one of the executive producers came up and said, Rickey, could you stay tomorrow and work? And I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, of course. And my family was there. We all drove up. We didn't fly up. We drove up from Georgia. So my mom and dad were there, and my friend Keith Thomas were there. And I remember we were in a hotel that didn't have a room that night, so we had to move. And we took all of our luggage. We walking through New York in the middle of the night, because obviously we were going to be at the shoot. And I said, look, is it okay for Keith to come? They said, oh yeah, have Keith come and he can work too. So we go in the next day, find a hotel room, get up the next morning and go in. And you may have heard of the home video called Jim Henson's Sing Along, Do Along tape. And it was Jim playing Rolf the dog, who is singing. He's at a Hawaiian luau, and he's got a big straw hat, and Rick Lyons was performing Ralph's hands. And he was singing a song, I Am the Music Man. I am the music man. Da, 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 da. What do you play, man? And then in the background were all these pigs. There's a pig playing a piano, a pig playing a marimba, and a pig playing a steel drum. And they asked me, now I'm finally answering your question. The first thing I did for Henson was to play a pig's hands playing a marimba. Now we were, Richard Hunt was directing this, who performed Scooter, of course, and Beaker and a bunch of other characters. He was directing, and I'd never met him before. So we go in, and I remember we walk into the set, and it was just fascinating. You see Jim with Rolf. That was enough as a fan. That was crazy. But Richard came up to all of us that were doing the hands to make sure we understood and could hear the track and know what to do. So they played the track, the music track, and I would listen to the marimbas and figure out, what to do. And he would come to each person and say, okay, go. And you had to do your thing. And then he'd move to the next one and say, okay, you go. He said, okay, everybody's good. And then we did the take. And that was my first job. And so it was a part of it. Oftentimes, you assist somebody. But that was my first time ever on camera. The first time, the next time I worked with them, they asked me I went up for an audition. This is a couple of months later, because I would work at that time when they started using me. That after that happened, they sent me a letter that said, we really, Jim and Jane, like your work and they'd love to continue using you. And, just understand that you never know too much in advance exactly how much you'll be working until the work's ready. So it turned out to be about every 3 months or so, I would work on something. And it could range from 1 day to 3 weeks to 3 months. It really depended on what it was. But the next job, the first time I had a full body puppet on, was I was auditioning for Jim Henson Hour, and they asked me to be in a commercial. Turner Network Television had just started, what's known as TNT. And at that time, they were the only place you could watch the Muppet Show and Fraggle Rock reruns. So they did a commercial where Kermit's in front of the red curtain and Jim's performing Kermit and saying, hi ho, Kermit the Frog, watch TNT to see all these programs. And Crazy Harry, Jerry Nelson's famous character that blows everything up with TNT, would come in and push Kermit out and blow things up. And they asked me to do that. And I was nervous because I knew Jerry Nelson performed that character. And I never asked, why are you asking me to do this? I had great respect for Jerry, but I'd not met him. I'd never met him. And so we're auditioning. And then it was time to go. We were in the what they call Carriage House, which is another Henson office that has 3 levels. And then the basement, or the basement, not the basement, but the first floor is an insert stage, a small studio. And they said, go down. Jim said, they're ready for you. And he pulled Crazy Harry out of a box. I mean, the Crazy Harry. And he put him on. He said, remember, Crazy Harry has this kind of slinky walk. Remember that. I said, okay. He said, okay, take him. And I took the puppet. I'm walking down the stairs with Crazy Harry. And I go in and shoot the commercial. It went really well. Kevin Clash was there kind of watching to make sure everything was okay. Rita Peruggi was there. And during the middle of the shoot, the puppet was attached to one of the props, so I couldn't bring him down. I had to stay up because his arm was attached to something. And I remember in the middle of it, looking over at the door, and Jerry Nelson poked his head in the door and looked at me like, who are you? And then just disappeared. And it scared me to death. I thought, oh no, it wasn't my fault. I never talked to him about it. All the times I got to work with him, I never said, why did they let me do that? But it was a lot of fun. And they let me do it for whatever reason. And so then, of course, that was an existing character that Jerry had created. And then I think the first character I created myself would have been Laughing Boy for Dog City, which was part of Jim Henson Hour. And that was shot in Canada. And then the next one after that would have been Art the Armadillo for Song of the Cloud Forest. So, each job came along, and Jim would put me in roles that, I just was flabbergasted that he would let me do these things. But it was just wonderful. A lot of fun. Long-winded answer.
Nice. So you have worked on Big Bag.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
right.
You got to play the role of Bag.
Yes. That was Nina Bamberger was an incredible producer. She's passed away now. Just a wonderful person. Was very supportive of my work. And she was primarily working on Sesame Street, but she was working with Sesame Workshop. And they, when the Cartoon Network started, this would have been back in the early 90s, really very, very early. Excuse me. They did a show called Big Bag, which was puppets. Joey Mazzarino played Chelly, which was like a patchwork kind of ragdoll dog. And then his best friend was a bag. I mean, literally a canvas sack that had a little mouth, had no eyes. It was just a bag with a handle and then a little bitty mouth. And the original script, and there was also some sock puppets in the show, Argyle and Jim Sock, that lived in a sock bin. And the original script, every time Bag would say something, it would say, sound effect goes here. And so I think the original plan was to use sound effects. Excuse me. But when I read it, we were doing a read through. You know, you typically would do a read through before you actually film something. And I asked them, I said, look, I said, do you mind if I try something, you know, where I can give, if I could figure out a language for Bag so that it's not always sound effects. I mean, sound effects are okay, but if we could relate to each other as characters instead of just honking or whatever. Not honking's okay if you're a honker, but Bag was new. And I said, you care if I give it a shot? And they said, oh, go for it. So what I did is I would take whatever Bag was supposed to be saying, like if he was supposed to, or he or she was supposed to say hello. I put a B in front of whatever this blah blah, and I would it was I just used the B. If he was going to say really, it would be bleep bleep, or hello Charlie, blah 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 bleep. So I did that, and they loved it. And you could do that and make Bag sound happy, sad, angry, you know, whatever. So it worked really well, and everybody loved it. And then we got to do Argyle Sock, so that was great because I got to do a Scottish accent. Joey Mazzarino was playing Jim Sock, and of course he's from the Bronx, so he did a Bronx, you know, hey, over there, look at the taxi. And then I did more of a Scottish brogue like this. Oh, look what's going on over here. So it was a lot of fun and a very simple, lightweight puppet. So that was cool.
You still have Bag.
No, unfortunately, usually the puppets are kept by, I think at that time, probably Henson. I'm guessing they still have them. They probably keep them in storage in case they ever need them again. But yeah, we don't get to keep those. They occasionally, there's one that I would love to take home, but doesn't happen very much. I mean, they may let you take it home to practice, but you don't get to keep them.
So you did Cookie Monster's grandma on Sesame Street and Sesame Beginnings.
Yeah, that was a fun thing to do. I mean, I'd not worked on Sesame Street. One of the things when I was hired by Jim, they were planning, just a little backstory. They hired me at a time that they were looking to make the original deal, you know, that Muppets were going to be bought by Disney. So there were a lot of plans to do production down in Florida, in Orlando, and also out in California. And it was going to be a big deal and a lot of work. And the plan was, I was told at the time, to relocate us, and I assumed to Florida. And all this was happening, you know, like, I mean, it was incredible. I mean, I couldn't have dreamt that it would be better. I mean, I literally just trying not to screw up. And where was I going with this? You had asked me. Oh, yes, this is Sesame Street. I never asked if I could work on Sesame Street. I would have loved to, but there was so much other stuff going on that I figured I should just, as long as they're happy with what I'm doing, just do what they want you to do. So I never asked about it. I never even asked to visit the set. I mean, I would just like, I would go home to Georgia between jobs, which was most of the time, because you would work and then it's very sporadic. And I would go back home to Georgia and I worked at the library channel, where I did the puppets. And then I worked for a t-shirt company that designed silk screen shirts. And then when I started working for Henson, I worked at a TV station. So when I went back home, I ran a camera for the news department and I did some puppets, but it was mostly just production work, editing and stuff like that. So at any rate, the whole thing with Sesame kind of came as a surprise. Kevin Clash was helping direct some of these shows, and they said, we want you to come up and audition for Grandma. And so I went up to New York, and there were several characters. If you've seen that show, it's the baby versions of Cookie Monster. It's kind of like Muppet Babies, but for Sesame Street. So they needed the parents or the grandparents. So I did an audition for Grandma, and they basically took there's more than one Cookie Monster puppet, and they put a wig and then a flowery, nice dress. And I basically made her sound something like this. Oh, well, Cookie Monster, so good to see you. Oh, don't break my china. That kind of thing. But I performed Cookie for, I think they did 4 or 5 of those videos. And it was fun, a lot of fun. Worked with a lot of the Sesame staff that I'd never met. So that was fun.
You still have Grandma?
They still occasionally do Grandma Cookie, but I'm not doing it. It's the other people at Sesame now that occasionally will do, and it's been different people. I think I can't remember even who does it, but what they do is they take one of the older duplicate Cookie Monsters and dress him up like an old lady, and then when they're finished, they just take it off and use it for a second Cookie Monster. So,
Okay. You have worked on a TV show called Wisharoo Park.
Wisharoo Park was, I live just outside of Nashville, and there was a company at the time. I first came up here in the mid-90s to work for the Nashville network. And we were doing these characters there called Tight Line and Sinker, the Bass Whackers, Tight Line, Sinker, and Stinkbait. I was working with Ed May and Greg Jarnigan and Kim Snodgrass and Dave Pavlonis. And Dave Pavlonis built the puppets. And Randy Towers was a great director and cinematographer. And came up here for that. And in the process, I was introduced to Animax Designs. Animax Designs, excuse me, was a company that was founded and run by Chuck Fawcett, who's a very talented artist and puppet builder. He trained under Kermit Love, who was a famous builder at Muppets or Henson. And so I met him and did some design work for them on the side, freelance. And they ended up doing a show called Wisharoo Park. And I really didn't have anything to do with the designs of the show. And it was a show with Muppets, usually performers do the voices live. With these particular shows, the voices, for the most part, were pre-recorded like a radio show and then played back on set, and you would lip sync. And I played a rabbit whose name I can't remember. A great puppet, but I remember she had these cool eye mechanisms to make her eyes blink. But we would memorize the track just so we could make it look like lip sync. And we did that. I did one season of that show. So that was great. Excuse me. And I would, again, do design work for Animax. I think they just recently sold the company, so it's called something else now, and I can't remember what, but they do incredible work. They mostly do work for theme parks now, like animatronics.
And how about Splinter from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series?
Yeah, Splinter was my first experience on a film. I had, trying to remember, had been doing TV shows with Henson, and we did, just to catch up on the chronology of all of it. But I'm trying to remember. We did the early '90s when before Jim passed away. We did a special at Disney World called Muppets at Disney World. Then we did Muppet Vision 3D out in LA. After that, Jim passed away. Well, no, we did Ninja Turtles 1, the first one. Jim was there for that. And I was asked, I was on another project in New York with Jim. I think it was Song of the Cloud Forest. And we were walking up the stairs, and he was in front of me, and I'm following him. And he's like, "Oh, Ricky, you ever heard of the Ninja Turtles?" And I said, "No." I knew who they were. My brother was a big Ninja Turtle fan, but I didn't really know them that well. I said, "A little bit. I don't know a lot of it." He said, "Well, they're these turtles that do kung fu." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, you're going to be working on the movie." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And that's sort of the way it went. I would go work on one project, and then he would tell me the next project. So every time I would come up, I knew what the next project was. And it might be months away, but I always knew there was another thing. And so that's how I ended up. Kevin used me as an assistant, and it was shot in Wilmington, North Carolina. And the studio, we went there, we had 1 week of rehearsal before the shoot started because these were very complex creature shop characters that were built in the London creature shop. This was before the Henson creature shop had moved permanently to the States. They were all built in London, shipped over. And Splinter was a large puppet, heavy, so heavy that Kevin had to wear a back protection, like weight belt. And then inside the belt was an aluminum rod that came up over his head. And the puppet sort of sat on this rod, and it kind of distributed the weight so that Kevin could get his hand up inside and not feel the full weight. I would get behind Kevin and put my arms, the arms, like if this is Splinter's arm, my hand wouldn't fit in here because it was too thin. So what it was is a rod control that went down Splinter's arm, and then out of the elbow there was a handle, and I would move the arm like this, and then I could turn it, and then it had levers that would do whatever I did. I could literally pick up a cup and put it down, and you had another lever with your thumb that would make his wrist bend. So you could do everything that a human hand could do. It was unbelievable. And that puppet, I mean, the creature shop, Peter Brook, who is now one of the artistic leads at the Henson shop in Burbank, sculpted the character. And I wish I could remember the names, but there was an incredible lady that did all the hair and hand punched the hair into Splinter's face, one hair at a time. I mean, his whole face from here back to about right here was all individually punched into the foam, and then the foam body. And I mean, it just looked exquisite. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But we rehearsed for a week, try to get used to it, then went on set, so we were ready. The other thing in that show that people remember that we got to do was Baby Splinter. There's a young Splinter puppet that's in a cage. It's like a full-size rat, and it can do kung fu, and we choreographed that. It took about 5 or 6 of us to operate. One person on the head and the body, and one person on the arms, and another person on the legs, another person on the tail. And the character's about this tall, And out of the bottom, there's this pipe with about 50 cables that came out, because this was all really mostly cable controls. And then the other character was the baby turtles, where they show the baby turtles learning to eat pizza and learning to walk. And I worked on that cruise. So we did, I think I was controlling the lever that would make him stand up and go back down. And then other people were on the head, other people were on the arms, and somebody else on the legs. So oftentimes there'll be a character like that that takes 3 or 4 or 5 people to operate. So you rehearse as much as you can, and it gets to be like a Zen-like magic if you can get it to work right. It's if it doesn't work, it looks really bad, but it's a lot of fun, and when it works really well. It's pretty amazing. And then we did the second movie. Jim had passed away between those films, unfortunately, but we did the second one in Wilmington too, so that was great.
And let's see. You have worked on Animal Jam where you got to play Waffle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that show was a blast. It was shot in that was shot at what was then called Disney MGM Studios. I think it's Hollywood Studios now, but at that time they actually had a functioning studio there. In other words, you could go, and at the time they even had Disney had an animation studio there. So when you went to the park, you could walk through and watch a production. In that case, I don't remember if they did that with us. They did on Muppets at Disney World. I know people came through up at the top of the stage and could look down and watch us working. That same stage, they may have closed the tour then, but Animal Jam was a lot of fun. It was one of the first series that I did where I actually got to take a character from ground zero. And that was a case where Hallie Stanford Henson was the producer, and John Kennedy was on the show. John Tertaglia was on the show. Leslie Carrara was on the show. Andy Stone was on the show. Allison Mork was on the show. And I forget the gentleman's name that was inside the big elephant character. I always felt for him because it was so hard. But it was a dance show that was designed to get kids to exercise and dance, and they used animal movements to try to mimic animals. So that's why they call it Animal Jam. And Waffle was a cow monkey, and Leslie played a zebra. And it was a blast. We would do one show a day, and we did, I think, 2 seasons at once. I think we shot everything at one time. And so we'd go in the morning, read through, go in and shoot it, go to lunch, come back. And there were kids, there were a group of kids, maybe 4 professional actors and dancers and we had a choreographer who would teach us these dances every morning. And then they would bring in actual kids from the park or from local schools to be the crowd of kids that are dancing, and they would teach them the dances. And then there was a lot of dancing and a lot of music. So we had some wonderful music on that show. And every show you had at least one song that you sang, and then you had to do a dance and sing it 3 times. They would shoot you close up dancing and singing. Then they would shoot you in front of the kids with all the kids in the back dancing. Then they would put you on a rolly, which is a little seat with wheels on it, and you're down below the camera, and you would walk through the crowd dancing. So you had to do it 3 times, which could be exhausting. Luckily, I was younger then, but it was fun. And the show, only did 1 season, but it's some of the most fun I ever had, just because we all just had so much fun working together on it. And working at Disney World's not bad.
So, could you do the voice of Waffle?
Sure. Let me see if I can. Hey, Cameron, how's it going, buddy? Wiggle your cow monkey ears. I think that's him. It's been a while. Yes, indeedy, Edie. That's something he used to say a lot. Edie was the zebra. Leslie Carrera.
Okay. So I have some DVDs.
Mhm.
Like this one.
Yep, there it is. Grandma's in that one. Hello, Cameron. Thank you, sweetie, for buying. Thanks for supporting your grandma.
You're welcome, Cookies, Grandma.
Oh, thanks, Cameron. You're such a sweet boy. What kind of cookies do you like?
I like chocolate chip.
Oh, that runs in the family. Let's see what I can do for you.
And I have a Cookie Monster puppet.
Oh, look at that.
Hello, Grandma.
Oh, hello, Cookie. So surprised to see you here. What you doing where are you, Nova Scotia?
Nope.
Where are you?
I'm in Neverland.
Oh, gee, I get them all mixed up. So you're in Newfoundland. Well, do they have any good cookies in Newfoundland?
Me have some in the kitchen.
Ah, well, I bet they use a lot of maple syrup up there.
Oh, me love you, Grandma.
Oh, me love you too, Cookie. Just stay away from the China.
Well, me got to go.
Me gotta go too. See you later, Bubba.
Bye, Grandma.
Bye. You're so cute. That's really good. That's a really good Cookie Monster. That's great, Cameron.
And I do have an Animal Jam
Yeah.
VHS tape.
Oh, there he is, right in front of the big elephant. Yeah, yeah. He just he's a little sounded like grandma. He's younger like this. Me and Edie just dancing away on that show right there. You better believe it. Dancing and singing with a bunch of kids and one great big elephant. His name was Bozark. He's so friendly, but he wore himself slap out dancing. Whoa, sweating like crazy, but he was good. He sure was.
Okay.
What else you got in your grab bag?
Um,
You don't have to have something. I'm just asking.
I do have a picture of you, Waffle.
Oh boy, I hope it's my good side. Oh, look at that. And there's that fella when he was actually young and handsome. What happened to him? Oh, that's nice. Yeah, yeah. Ricky told me about that. You guys met at the food court at the Nashville Mall. That was nice. Oh, that's a good picture.
Okay.
Oh, oh, it's Grandma again. My voices are all sounding the same. There she is in front of Hooper's store. Lots of ingredients for cookies in there. Yeah. Yeah, that was my younger days.
And I have this.
Oh, Kevin, of course, did the voice of Splinter. I'll try. I'll see. Oh, Cameron, cowabunga. Sort of what Kevin sounded like. I'm not as good at it as he is.
Hey, that's Cookie Monster's line.
Oh, was it Cookie? Oh, it is. You're right. It is. Oh, it sort of made its way from one universe to the other. Yeah, that's funny. I never thought of it that way.
All right.
Oh, Wishery Park, and I have no idea. See, I can't do the voice for that because I didn't do the voice for it. It was a wonderful voice, but it was some lady who I don't know, but she had a beautiful voice, and the rabbit there, I see her in the middle. Yeah, she's right there under the word park. Yeah, she was a cutie.
I know the rabbit's voice name is.
Yeah,
Her name is Kim Snodgrass.
Kim Snodgrass, was it? Okay. Well, that's cool. Yeah, Kim's great. We worked with her for about 5 years here in Nashville.
Right? You drew these characters for me.
Yeah, I did something I did. There's Kermit and Elmo. That's a great frame. That's cool.
I have Muppets from Space.
Yes, that was a lot of fun to do. I had the privilege of being asked to fill in, oftentimes on a shoot with the main characters, you'll fill in when somebody's got more than one character. They might, in that particular case, Frank Oz was doing post-production on Bowfinger, film with Eddie Murphy. And so he was only available for maybe 2 days. So he came in and did what might be some of the heavier Miss Piggy shots that were with guest stars. He came in for a day or two and did those. But for the rest of the movie, in that case, this was before Eric Jacobson had taken over, had been asked to perform all of Frank's characters. So what they would do is I was asked to perform Animal for the majority of the film. And then I think Peter Lenz did Piggy. And then Sean Kennedy performed Fozzie. So what we would do is we'd do our very best impersonation. And then Frank would come in later and they would dub it. They call it looping or dubbing or ADR. And he would come and replace the voices. But you wanted to get, even though you're filling in, the main thing is to try to get the character to move and do the voice as close as you can get it. But you really want the character as a whole, the voice and the body and everything, to be as authentic to the character as you can. And that's, when you don't create the character, that's tougher, but it's an honor to be asked and you do the best you can. A lot of fun though. And that was filmed in Wilmington. So that was about 8 weeks filming in Wilmington, North Carolina, which was a blast.
Okay. And here's another one.
Oh yeah, Grandma Ethel. That's from Dinosaurs. After we finished, and she was voiced by Florence Stanley, who's a wonderful actress that's now passed away, but I met her one time. I joined Dinosaurs. It was on for 4 seasons, and I came on board the 3rd season. So I was there for 2 seasons, 3 and 4. And they brought me on because we had done the first 2 Ninja Turtle films, and then the 3rd film, for some reason, was going to be done by another company and not by Henson. I don't know why, but I was talking to Kevin Clash, and he said, "Look, they'd need somebody to come perform Ethel. They don't really have a regular performer for Ethel." And he also was doing Elmo on Sesame at the time and would leave Dinosaurs for like a week out of the month to go to Sesame. He said, "I need somebody to fill in for Baby on Baby Light episodes and somebody to do Ethel." And I said, "I'd love to do it." So they worked that out and I ended up on the show. But Florence did the voice and I would mimic her. So I would, on Dinosaurs, when you perform the characters, now they're maybe 3 different types of puppets on Dinosaurs. There were hand puppets that were used for when things were on television, just regular hand puppets. There were walk-arounds, which is where somebody puts a suit on, like Earl. All the family were like that, like Big Bird. You put the whole suit on. And the face was controlled with a remote control unit by a puppeteer off stage with a controller, the Henson performance device, where you've got your fingers on like a gear shift and your hand in a thing called a Waldo to make the mouth move. And the puppeteers would talk to the person in the suit over headsets and work out the staging. Ethel was a great big hand puppet, kind of like Yoda, but huge. And she sat in a chair, which was like the chair is like like a wheelchair in a way. It's remote control. And I would get in the chair. There's a seat, a fiberglass seat inside the chair. Then there's a monitor television so I can see what I'm doing, see what the camera sees. A microphone on my headset so I can talk to the person controlling the eyes. And I would put my hand in her head and I would turn her head and make her talk. And my other hand would go into her hand, which was a glove, and I could pick things up and make her talk and all this. She was very heavy. So what they did is behind her head, there were all these cables, these rods that came out. And they were kind of the same thing they did with Splinter. A puppet that heavy, they build a support in there so that when I would take my hand out of the puppet, her head would just kind of sit there. So it would take a lot of the weight and then it would slide my hand back up in there and I could move her around without having the entire weight of the puppet on my hand. And they could drive me around in that chair, which was crazy. And she had a little gear shift on the edge of the chair that she could drive. But she was a lot of fun. Florence did a voice that was, try to remember, she was always like this. Get out of the way, fat boy. She'd always really mean to Errol. And she loved her grandchildren. And she loved the baby when he wasn't being difficult. But she did a voice something like this. But she didn't like Errol at all. No, he was a pain. So I would listen to Florence's voice, and then whenever I was on set, I would just mimic as close as I thought I could. And then afterwards, Florence would come in and redo the voice. So you sort of hand off the baton. I mean, it's kind of like chicken or the egg on that show. You know, because the main thing they want is when they're filming on the set, and it was filmed with 3 cameras like a sitcom. They want to get spontaneity. I mean, they want to be able to direct if they want to change a line, if they wanted to do something differently. If you were working to a pre-recorded track, you couldn't change it. So what they would do is once the characters were established in the first season or so, by listening to, most of the voices were redone, which was unusual for Muppets. Most of the time the performer did the voice. Kevin Clash did the baby and did the voice, but most everybody else would do the voice as a puppeteer, and then they wanted to have name stars come in and do the voices. So I remember Stuart Pankin, I think, did the voice for Earl. Sally Struthers, I know, did the voice for the daughter. And is it Sherman Hemsley that was from the Jeffersons did the voice of the big Triceratops that was Earl's boss. So it was an incredible show. It was just wonderful. We went out to California, my wife and I, for that, and would be there for about 4 to 6 months at a time for two years. And but it was a blast to do that show.
Okay. And this one.
Oh, okay. That's the crew from Ninja Turtles. That picture is very dark. It's hard to see, but Splinter is right next to Pete Brook there. He's hanging on the wall. That's the scene where they capture Splinter and they hang him on the wall to interrogate him. So that's Pete Brook in the white t-shirt who sculpted the puppet, and the lady there in the front is the talented lady that did the fur. Kevin's in there, then myself, and Rob Tigner, that's the name of the guy. Rob Tigner did the face for episode 2 and is a wonderful puppeteer.
All right. Do you have any puppets here?
Do I have any? Yeah, I've got, let's see what I've got. Hang on just a minute. Let me grab one of these. Okay. Howdy, I'm Billy Bob Broke. How are you, Cameron?
Good.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like to play me some country music every now and then. And that's my buddy Eddard Flat back there stuck on behind the lunchbox. See it back there. John Kennedy performs him, but he's not here today. So he's a little bit of a loss for words. Hey. Yeah, you're not gonna say anything. Oh, John got me that lunchbox. Do you like Planet of the Apes?
Hmm.
Well, that's not very enthusiastic. You don't have to like them. I'm just kidding. No, I used to have that lunchbox when I was a little puppy. So John said, I know just the thing for you. So he sent me that sort of as an impromptu birthday gift.
Nice.
Yep. Thank you. I would play you some music, but this is just a prop. Won't make one bit of noise at all. See? But yeah, I like John and I are doing a band called Flat Broke, and this is Billy Bob Broke, and that back there is Eddard Flat. So we're trying to get a show off the ground. So this is he's just a hound dog. Say that again. Ain't nothing but a hound dog. Hey Cameron, you're in a little box over there. I think he's in a box. Oh, so are you. Oh, it's him. Box. I love technology. What else? It's a junky room. You should have cleaned this up before this show. But yeah, this puppet, I designed these two puppets and then John built them. He just did an incredible job. Really nice. And he's got fish weights in his jowls to make them kind of wobble. That's what makes them heavy. Now we're excited and hoping we can get these guys out there somehow. So we're working on that.
And you have another puppet.
Now that one, my hand will not fit in. I have really big arms like Popeye, and I can't get in that one. Let me see if I might. I know there's one I can get in. Hang on. Hi, Cameron. How are you?
Good.
I'm Boss Frog. Yeah, just doing a little construction around here. Trying to get a little work done. Trying to put together a computer. Got to keep up with the latest technology. That it? Well, I've got work to do. Well, you can go if you want. Wait. Hi, Mom. We working late tonight. Are you getting off at 7:30? This is another puppet John built. I don't really know I just called him boss, but he looks like a boss, but he's a little construction worker. And it's big enough that I can get my hand in there. There's some puppets that I just can't, I can get in, but I can't get out. That's a problem. Have genetically large forearms.
And how many puppets do you have?
Puppets, I don't really have that many. When I was a kid, you've probably seen these, but the Muppet Show was so popular, Fisher Price did a bunch of puppets, and they made Kermit, Piggy, Fozzie, and they were Fisher Price toys, so they weren't quite full size like the Muppets, but they were actually pretty well made, especially the Kermit. And I had a Kermit. I don't know if I still have him. I probably do somewhere. I don't know what I did with him, but I mean it's from 1977. He's practically worn out, but I have Cookie Monster and I have Oscar, like nearly toast. Uh, but there, I have those just that part of what I had as a kid. And then I would start building puppets. But as far as what I have now, it's just here because John built him and we've filmed stuff. And then, the others, I really don't have. I probably have 4 or 5 puppets. That's probably about it.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Ricky, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a lot of fun reminiscing. And thanks for your interest. It was so nice to meet you and your mother. And um, just we appreciate all of us puppeteers and Muppet performers that really appreciate, your interest in our work and your passion for what we do. It's very, very, very humbling, and we appreciate it.
All right. I forgot to tell you, you have made a cameo appearance as a beach hippie.
Oh yeah, I did. I try to forget that because I don't like being on camera. And they have a tradition of doing that. And on Muppets from Space, they ask a bunch of us. It was me and Peter Lenz and John Kennedy and Drew Massey, and they call the extras. I think they call them loonies, people that were on the beachhead waiting for the big arrival of Gonzo's family of Gonzos on a spaceship. So they wanted us to look pretty weird. So the day we were going to shoot it, they had us all go to hair and makeup and to costuming. And they put us all in these weird outfits, kind of shiny aluminum, gold and silver. Just so happened I look like Boy George. They put a colander on my head and painted half my face silver and half of it black or something. It's really weird. I mean, I had one line and I got it so bad, delivered it so bad they cut it, which is fine with me. But it was fun. I actually, if you watch that movie, I know a lot of people are not huge fans of Muppets from Space, but it was a lot of fun to make, and there's a lot of fun memories. And some of the funniest stuff is if you watch the movie and watch for John Kennedy dancing. John's actually a very good dancer, but he's wearing this pith helmet and a silver, like aluminum foil costume, and he's dancing like a madman during one of the scenes. So you can look for that. You can forget I'm in it. I don't like being on camera.
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I don't think so. Just again, I just appreciate your interest and appreciate your time and everybody that's taken time to listen to this and appreciate your show and what you're doing. We appreciate your fandom.
Nice. Okay, guys. Um, I just want to say, hey, puppeteers, welcome to the podcast. So stay tuned. There will be more guests coming up. Until next time, peace.
Is it okay that I did that?
Let's see that again.
Okay. Peace.